a lot of America's racial history is just in terms of black and white. From slavery to emancipation to the civil rights movement, that's always just been the main two majority groups. But as we go into the 20th century and the 21st century, we see more people of color living in America, such as Middle Eastern people, Latin American people, all different kinds of people, and that's what creates the big, diverse melting pot of America that we see today. So, when we live in a more diverse world, I just think it's great. I think it's great to see all these different people represented in our society. But, yeah, when you have a lot of different people living here, you see a lot of the same experiences begin to form among people of color. And often these experiences are kind of negative. You see a lot of racism and stereotypes and microaggression that you have to deal with on a daily basis. I was only kind of aware of this when I moved to the States, and a lot of people were asking me, like, what am I, and like, what's my nationality? And I wasn't really sure. I knew that I was from Trinidad, and I knew that I was of mixed race, but I didn't really know anything beyond that. So when I went home and asked my mom, she would just tell me, oh, we're all human race. And that didn't really help. That was really confusing for me, because how are you supposed to like live in a society where they're trying to box you into a demographic if you don't know what demographic you're supposed to be in? So I figured out in middle school that if you don't have a place, then society will put you in one. So a lot of people in middle school thought I was Indian for some reason, just because I kind of looked like it. And so there were a lot of jokes about me having an arranged marriage to this other Indian kid at my school that went on for like 2 years. And then there were some jokes about me just being smart and having good grades because my parents wanted me to be a doctor or something. But I thought I was smart and I was getting good grades because I was working hard and I was earning it. But I quickly learned that all of my accomplishments were basically invalid in the eyes of my peers. And it just didn't feel good. Even if I wasn't Indian, I knew what it felt like. So then as I got into high school and I got more involved in social justice and activism, a lot of people started stereotyping me as like this angry black woman. And and I don't think that's fair, because I'm not really angry about anything. I'm just passionate about social justice and equality. And that's not a thing to be angry about. It's just a thing to go for in life. So as I was getting more involved in social justice and activism, I was kind of, I was kind of learning about like different things that I would hear from people in real life and things that I would hear in TV and in movies and even in songs on the radio. And I was just kind of picking up on these microaggressions that just seemed kind of offensive to me. And even though it was kind of hard, you couldn't enjoy things without like a guilty conscience, it was okay. It just made me more aware of the world that we live in. And I think this is called political correctness by some people. Some people think this concept is the death of creativity and a form of fascism, but I don't really think it is at all. I think it's just a fancy term of saying like not being offensive. And not being offensive is a good thing. Since when do you have to be mean to be funny or creative or original? And that's just putting people who are already marginalized in society in a lower place. And it's been going on forever, and I think it's time for a change. Especially, this is pretty bad when it's being used for humor's sake. This has been going on forever. It's just funny to put people down because of what they look like or their orientation. And it has to come to an end at some point, and it's completely possible to be creative or original or funny without being offensive. One of my favorite examples of this would be the recent TV show Orange is the New Black. This show is really diverse, but not only in race, but in sexual orientation and class and gender, and it just depicts a positive world in which people are just getting along and telling real stories of real people. And that's the kind of thing that I like to see. I like to see things that are original, and I like to see things that are funny without being offensive or attacking my personality. So if we're living in a more diverse world, how does that get depicted on the screen and in movies and in media? So I think it's pretty clear to see, like, if you're looking at ads, you see like Target ads of like a white woman and a black woman and an Asian woman, and they're all like getting along and kind of just like having a picnic. Or maybe you think about that like Coke ad where there's all these people of different identities and they're all getting along and singing America the Beautiful in different languages. which made a lot of people mad. But diversity is more than that. It's kind of just representing the world that we live in a tangible form in fiction and in advertising. And it's a trend that's pretty hard to ignore. But this often falls under the category of tokenism. Tokenism is the inclusion of just one or more minority person in a group that is a majority space. And usually this sounds kind of good, but it's just not. It kind of forces this person to be exemplary of their entire race or community. And it's just an easy way out for producers to avoid complaints of lack of diversity. And it just makes them a background character who has no purpose beyond just being there for their race or their identity. So one example is the Smurfs, which is like really old and it has nothing to do with race, but it still makes sense and it's applicable like all the time. So the Smurf system basically works like there are like 16 other Smurfs and they're like male and they all have these like defining characteristics after which they're named, like grumpy or clumsy or lazy. And then there's Smurfette, and she has no defining characteristics beyond her gender. And basically her personality is just like she says stereotypically girly things and does girly things. And she only exists in deviation to the male characters. This has become so prevalent in society that it's called the Smurfette principle, and they coined that in New York Times. And it basically exemplifies tokenism and can be seen all the time. So why is this a problem in society? That would probably be because it presents a message to young children who are watching this show that males can be multifaceted. They can be relatable to like 16 different characters, but girls can only be one thing. They can just be a flat character who only exists to be around other males and just be a girl. And another example, which breaks my heart because I love J.K. Rowling, would be the Harry Potter movies. Basically, the world of Hogwarts claims to be colorblind. All of the characters of color are just kind of there, and they're not addressed by their race, and they just never talk about it. But this presents a problem because there are some minority characters in the background, like Cho Chang, who's like just kind of vaguely Asian. They don't like specify anything. And then the Patil twins, who are Indian, and then Dean Thomas and Angelina Johnson, and then there's Lavender Brown, who for like the first 3 movies was black, and then she like changed races just because she was like more relevant to the plot. So that was pretty interesting. I noticed that.